I still remember the way Lena used to smile at me, like I was her entire world. That crooked grin, always just a little late to reach her eyes, used to feel like sunlight breaking through a storm. But if you asked me now what it meant, I'd tell you this. It was rehearsed, and I was too damn blind to see it. We were 2 years into our marriage when everything started to unravel. Quietly, liquid wood rotting from the inside. We met late in life, both in our mid-30s, and bonded fast over long nights at the architecture firm we worked at. She was magnetic, beautiful in an understated, elegant way, the type who wore confidence like perfume. She spoke often about a simple life, kids, a dog, a garden, and when we got married, she left her job and became a homemaker. She made it seem like her dream, and I believed her. She kept the house immaculate. I'd come home to dinners I never asked for, the smell of lemon polish, her voice humming faintly from the kitchen. At first, it was charming, then it became almost too perfect, like she was painting a picture she knew I'd stare at for years to come. Still, I was happy, or at least I thought I was. We were trying for a baby, or so she said. Month after month, she'd tell me it just wasn't happening. I never pushed too hard. She seemed heartbroken each time. What I didn't realize was that her heartbreak wasn't over a baby. It was about the man she couldn't stop seeing behind my back. It started the night I left my office late. A co-worker, Mira, had dragged me to an unplanned dinner party. I texted Lena to ask if she was okay with it. She responded sweetly, saying I deserved a break, told me to have fun, and even offered to warm up food for me when I got home. I smiled at her text, thinking, thank God I married the best woman alive. Then I saw her, on my way home, walking past a quiet stretch of Fifth and Dover. I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure under the amber glow of a street lamp. She was laughing, her head tilted back, hand tangled with someone else's. It was Lena with a man I didn't recognize. They didn't see me. I stood hidden behind a bus shelter, my heart in my throat, every breath caught like a fishhook in my ribs. It wasn't just a hand-holding. It was her face, that same crooked smile. Only this time, it reached her eyes. My world splintered. I staggered home like a man walking underwater. Everything she ever said about love, loyalty, and building a family, all of it rang hollow now, like a bell cracked down the center. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't even mention it. I just sat in the dark while she slept beside me like nothing had happened. But something had. Something irreversible. The following days were a nightmare in slow motion. I started noticing things I had previously dismissed. Password changes, mysterious new lingerie tucked in drawers she never used, a sudden interest in skincare products she used to call overpriced snake oil. Subtle, but together, damning. One morning, while she was in the shower, she left her phone unlocked, a rare mistake. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I was noble, but I wasn't. My fingers moved on instinct. Within seconds, I found everything. Every lie. Text messages, sweet, seductive, naked in their intimacy. Photos of the two of them cuddled together on hotel beds, sharing desserts, sun-drenched selfies from rooftop bars. My wife, glowing in the arms of someone else. Then the worst of it, a conversation about an upcoming weekend getaway, a luxury spa trip to celebrate 1 year together. 1 year, I sat in our living room, watching the woman I loved melt into pixels on a screen, whispering sweet nothings to someone else. I felt gutted, hollowed out. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to trace every memory back to the moment she stopped loving me. The next morning, Lena kissed me on the cheek and mentioned she'd be visiting her old friend Tasha on Wednesday. I nodded, pretending not to know. She was glowing, vibrant in a way I hadn't seen in months. Now I knew why. I smiled, said, I hope you have fun. Inside, I was already planning how to destroy her world. I took the next day off work, claiming I had a dental emergency. She left early, suitcase in hand, perfume clinging to her like a ghost. I stood at the window, watching her walk away, every step a lie. When her check-in text arrived that afternoon, Tasha says hi, so good to catch up. I responded with a thumbs up, pretending I was busy at the office. Meanwhile, I had already hired a private investigator. He'd been tailing her since she left at 7:42 p.m. At 9:15, he sent me the first photo. Lena, poolside, wrapped in a robe, a glass of wine in hand. And beside her, the same man I saw on the street that night. They were kissing. I stared at the photo for hours. It wasn't just betrayal. It was obliteration. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was a stranger wearing her skin. The next morning, she texted again, "Hey, love. Hope you're eating okay. My card not working. Can you transfer some money?" That's when I flipped the switch. I replied, "It's not working because I disabled it." Her reply was immediate and filled with fake confusion. "What? I told you I'm Madashah. Why would you say something like that?" I laughed, a bitter, low sound, the kind of laugh that comes from a man who had finally stopped bleeding and started sharpening knives. That was when I began building the most painful personal revenge I could think of, one that would unravel her perfectly manicured lies, strand by strand, until she was standing barefoot in the wreckage she created. Her texts kept coming. Lena was unraveling faster than I expected. "Leo, what the hell is going on?" I stared at the screen. Leo, that was my name. The man she vowed to honor, to build a life with. And now she was texting me from a hotel bed she shared with another man, asking me to fund her betrayal. I let her sweat it out. The private investigator, Noel, had delivered a gold mine. Photos, receipts, even a discreet video clip from the hotel restaurant. There she was, wearing that floral red dress I bought her for our anniversary, feeding a forkful of steak into her lover's mouth while he kissed her wrist. The man's name was Chase Dalton, a mid-level executive from a tech company across town, married with 2 kids. He was 41, slim, polished, a cliche of temptation in a blazer, and he had absolutely no idea who he was screwing with. I didn't respond to Lena for hours. I wanted the silence to eat her alive. Around midnight, she called. I declined. She called again. I declined again. Then my phone buzzed once more. A voicemail. Her voice trembled. "Leo, I don't know what's going on. I didn't mean to lie. I didn't want you to worry. I'm not with Tasha. I needed time alone. Please call me back. I love you." I played it twice. The second time, I laughed. "You love me the way a vulture loves a dying animal." Maybe I texted back coldly. "I already know where you are. I've seen everything. Enjoy your last night." No reply. And that's when I started preparing. That weekend, I moved out. I'd spent weeks quietly transferring essentials, documents, my laptop, heirlooms, everything that mattered into a storage locker I paid for in cash. The apartment we once called home felt tainted, like the scent of perfume had sunk into the walls. I left an envelope on the dining table. Inside were divorce papers, screenshots, and a letter that simply read, "I'm not the fool you thought I was, Leo." Then I left, silent, controlled, no tears. By Monday, she was back. I knew the second she walked into that empty apartment and saw the note. My phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. Then again, and again, I let her torment build. At 3:15 p.m., she left a voicemail. Anger seeped through her fake innocence. "Leo, this is cruel. You just left. You didn't even talk to me. You're being dramatic over nothing." Nothing. The word made my blood boil. I answered the next call. My voice was ice. "You lied to me for over a year. Slept in my bed while loving another man. And now you want to tell me this is dramatic?" She started crying, softly at first, then louder, manipulative. "I didn't mean for it to happen. You were always so distant lately." I felt alone. Chase listened to me there. There was the switch, the part where she made me the villain in her story. I smiled distant. "Lena, I worked late nights to pay for that spa you used to cheat on me." Silence. Then she whispered, "So this is it?" I didn't respond. "Leo, please," she begged. "Let's talk in person. Please just hear me out." "You don't deserve a conversation," I replied coldly. "You deserve consequences." And I hung up. The next step was Chase. I wasn't going to leave him untouched. No, that man built his house on my broken promises, and it was time to burn it down. I met his wife, Charlotte Dalton, 3 days later. I dressed casually, clean, presentable. I showed up at her yoga studio during her lunch break and waited respectfully outside. "Hi," I said softly when she stepped out, sipping green juice. "Are you Charlotte Dalton?" she asked, pausing wary. "Yes," I replied. "I'm Leo Hart. I'm Lena's husband." Her face drained of color. 10 minutes later, we were sitting on a bench under an old oak tree in the park. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I just handed her a sealed envelope. Inside were everything: photos, messages, hotel bookings. The last page was a note I'd written in block letters. "He's been cheating on you with my wife for over a year." Charlotte didn't cry. She just whispered, "I thought it was just me, that I was crazy." I nodded slowly. "You weren't." Then I stood. "I'm sorry. I know this hurts. But you deserve to know." She clutched the folder to her chest like it was all she had left of her sanity. I walked away. I didn't look back. 2 days later, Lena showed up at my new place. How she found the address, I'll never know. Probably hacked into an old delivery order or some account we once shared. I opened the door slowly. She looked awful. Bags under her eyes. Hair tied in a messy bun. No makeup. Wearing one of my old hoodies like it was armor. "Please," she whispered. Lena whispered urgently, her voice cracking as she spoke. "Don't shut me out." I didn't say a word. She stepped inside without waiting for my permission, her eyes already brimming with unshed tears. She was falling apart, but the sight of her didn't move me. Not anymore. She took a step closer, and the weight of her misery seemed to swallow the room. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Chase found out he took the kids. He blames me for everything. He said I ruined his life." I leaned against the wall, folded my arms tightly across my chest. The words she'd just spoken echoed in my mind, but there was no sympathy left inside me for her. "You did ruin someone's life," I replied coolly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mine." For the first time since she walked in, Lena really looked at me. Her eyes met mine with an almost desperate intensity, as if she was searching for something. Maybe a flicker of forgiveness, maybe just the faintest sign of the person I used to be. But I wasn't him anymore. She hesitated, her breath shallow. "I never wanted this," she murmured. I stayed quiet. He said he loved me. He promised we'd be together if his wife ever left. But now he won't even answer my texts. I gave up everything for him. Her voice cracked with the weight of her confession, but I was beyond feeling pity. I cocked my head slightly, studying her face. "No," I said softly, "you gave up me, and now you're paying the price." Her eyes searched mine for any hint of softness, but she found none. With a shaky breath, she took a step toward me, her hand reaching out as if it could bridge the chasm between us. I took a step back, my body tensing. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't even pretend to care now. You can't just throw away 2 years and expect me to welcome you back with open arms." She cried out, her voice breaking. "I didn't throw them away, Leo. You." I cut her off, my tone hardening. "You threw them away first." I snapped. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but they were true. The silence that followed stretched between us like a taut wire. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Then I pulled out the final piece of my revenge. I had planned this moment meticulously, making sure every detail was in place. From the table, I picked up a manila envelope and held it out to her. Her eyes narrowed in confusion. "What's this?" she asked, her voice still thick with emotion. "Open it," I said. Inside the envelope, there was a letter, an official document. It was a copy of the legal complaint I'd filed for intentional infliction of emotional distress. And beneath it, an official notice from her university, signed by none other than her supposed friend Tasha, the one she had lied about seeing during the time she'd been hiding her affair. The letter was damning. It read, "To whom it may concern, I did not see Lena Hart at any time between March 12th to 17th. Any claims otherwise are false." Lena's hands trembled as she pulled the paper out of the envelope. As her eyes skimmed the words, her face drained of color. The paper slipped from her fingers like it had burned her, fluttering to the floor. She stared at me in disbelief. "You planned all this?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. I shook my head, my voice steady. "No, Lena, you did." The silence between us deepened, her wide eyes still searching my face, trying to understand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was simply done. She stood frozen in my living room, her mouth slightly open, her breath shallow. Her eyes flickered with shock. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of emotion. I wasn't crying or raging. I was calm, methodical, and I was about to make sure she faced the full weight of her betrayal. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with a mix of guilt and disbelief. "This is cruel," she whispered. "You're being cruel." I tilted my head slightly, echoing her words back at her. "Cruel? What's cruel, Lena? Watching your wife lie to your face while she kisses another man's neck in hotel elevators? What's cruel is wondering whether the nights she came home smelling of sandalwood and wine were from a drink with a friend or from screwing someone else." She looked down, her shoulders folding inward as if the weight of my words was too much for her to bear. I continued, my voice steady and cold. "What's cruel is pretending like you don't see it, because you're too afraid of what the truth might shatter." Her face crumpled at my words. She began to speak again, but I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my tone hard. "You didn't just mess up. You built an entire life around your betrayal. You lied for over a year, made me believe we were trying for a baby while you were planning spa weekend with him." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they meant nothing to me. They were currency she'd already spent on someone else. I stepped closer, my voice lowering to a whisper. "Leave. We're done." But Lena didn't move. Instead, she sank down onto the edge of the couch, a broken look on her face, as if she was trying to reclaim a spot that no longer belonged to her. She sniffled and wiped her eyes, and then she said, her voice shaking, "I've lost everything. My friends, my reputation. They know. Charlotte posted everything on social media. My inbox is full of people calling me a liar, a homewrecker." I didn't respond. I wouldn't comfort her. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her reckoning. Her voice broke, her words almost desperate. "I can go back to my job, Leo. I can fix this. I'll make it right. They saw it. My former boss emailed me. He told me not to bother reapplying. He said it's a bad look for the firm." "That's not my problem," I said flatly. "I was stupid," she shouted, suddenly breaking down. "I thought I was falling in love with someone new, but it wasn't real. It was just stupid lust. It wasn't real. You were real. You always were." I leaned in closer, my tone quiet but firm. "Funny," I said softly. "I used to say the same thing about you." Her face crumpled at my words, and I watched as she finally broke. But I wasn't done yet. The next day, I met with my lawyer, Maya Patel. She was sharp, professional, and ruthless, a woman who'd seen it all in a world of nasty divorces. But when I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, texts, images, timelines, even proof of Lena's financial misuse, she smiled with approval. "This is airtight," she said with a slight grin. "You'll walk away clean." I wanted her to walk away with nothing. I replied, my voice cold. Maya didn't flinch. "Then that's what we'll do." She filed a petition to freeze the joint accounts, submitting documentation of Lena's financial misuse. Since most of the assets were in my name, our condo, my stocks, my car, Lena had no leverage. The once poised and proud woman who had manipulated me was now fighting to survive in a world she had scorched herself. But I wasn't done yet. A week later, I paid a visit to her parents. Yes, her parents. They had always liked me. In fact, they once called me their son-in-law with pride. But I wasn't there to explain myself. I was there to deliver the final blow. The best thing that ever happened to me was the moment I realized I could let go of Lena. But the path to that realization was long and painful, filled with moments of self-doubt and heartbreak. It was a quiet afternoon when I decided to speak to her father, Dale. I had to wait until he was alone on the porch before I could approach. The stillness of the moment matched the tension I felt in my chest as I walked up. He looked up from his drink, startled, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Leo," he said, as if he hadn't expected me. "I won't stay long," I said quickly, holding out a folder. "But I thought you should know the truth before Lena paints a different picture of what happened." He stared at the folder, his face gradually losing color as he flipped through the pages. With each passing sheet, his expression darkened, tightening with every fact I laid bare. I didn't speak while he read. I knew this would be hard for him, but he needed to hear it. He deserved to know the reality of what Lena had done. When he was finished, he said nothing. He simply rubbed his face, his eyes tired and defeated. After a long pause, he muttered, "Goddamn, she'll tell you I left her without reason." I nodded, already prepared for her version of events. "I gave up Dale, but not because I wanted to. She did. It wasn't me. It was her." He looked up at me, his voice quiet and almost resigned. "I believe you." His eyes softened then, a mixture of regret and understanding. "I always warned her, don't mistake comfort for weakness. You didn't deserve this." I didn't know how to respond to that. It was a strange comfort, hearing someone validate my pain without judgment. He wasn't angry with me. He wasn't angry with Lena either. He simply understood that there was no going back from this. That night, I did something I hadn't expected to do. I took the last box of her things from my house. The photos, the trinkets, the small gifts she had left behind, and I threw them away. As I watched the box at the bottom of the dumpster, something inside me shifted. A quiet sob caught in my throat. I cried, not because I missed her, but because I realized I had stopped missing her. The man who had believed that love could fix anything. The one who used to surprise her with flowers on random Tuesdays and write her letters during work meetings because he couldn't stop thinking about her. That man had died the night I saw her on the sidewalk with Chase. And in that moment, I let him go. I had to. 2 days later, my phone rang. The number was blocked. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Lo, her voice sounded different, flat and lifeless, the remnant of her tears having long since dried up, leaving nothing but bitterness. "You really think you've won, huh?" I let out a slow breath and smiled. "This isn't a game, Lena. But if it were, yeah, I've already won." She scoffed. "You ruined my life." "No," I replied. "You did that. I just made sure no one missed the show." There was a long silence on the other end. Then she spoke again, her voice cold and distant. "I'll fight this. You'll see." "I hope you do," I said, my voice calm, because I got lawyers who love a fight, especially when the other side has nothing left but a story no one believes. I hung up, but the silence that followed her call was more than just the absence of words. It was a confirmation I needed. She couldn't spin her lies anymore. I had won, not through revenge, but through the truth. That night, I received another message. This time it was from Chase. It was a simple text. "You had no right." I replied instantly. I had every right. Then I attached a photo, undeniable proof, of him kissing Lena at the hotel spa, time-stamped and dated. There was no response. I didn't need one. The silence spoke volumes. I had cut him just as deep as she had cut me, and in a strange way it felt final. That was the end. I didn't need to hear from either of them again. It had been nearly 2 months since I left Lena, but the aftershocks of her betrayal still crept up on me in unexpected ways. In the stillness of my morning coffee, I would sometimes hear her laugh in the back of my mind. It would take me a moment to remember that it wasn't real, that it had been fake all along. Every intimate moment we shared, every little thing that once seemed meaningful, was now tainted with doubt. And yet, as time went on, I began to breathe again. Peace had returned, but it was slow and cautious, like a wounded animal testing the waters before fully stepping into the light. I started running in the mornings to clear my head. I went to therapy once a week, something I had resisted for far too long. I even reconnected with my brother, someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year because of how consumed I had been by Lena. Lena called a few more times after that. I ignored every one of them. Then came the emails, desperate, apologetic, then angry, then apologetic again. The classic cycle of guilt and manipulation that I had finally become immune to. And then There was an email that almost made me laugh out loud. Leo, I've lost everything. My parents won't even speak to me. Chase has completely disappeared. I don't even know where he lives now. I have no job, no friends. I just want to start over. I know I messed up, but can we meet? Just one real conversation, closure, if nothing else. I read it through a couple of times, then deleted it. Closure? No, I thought closure was something I'd already given myself. I had already won. And in the end, I knew that she wasn't the only one who needed to move on. I had moved on, and I was finally free. She was asking for closure from a man she'd buried alive. I drafted a reply. You don't want closure, Lena. You want forgiveness. But I'm not your priest. I'm the grave you dug for your old life. I didn't send it. I didn't have to. Some ghosts are better left haunting the living. That week, I got a call from Maya, my lawyer. She's contesting the divorce. She said flatly, she doesn't have grounds. I said, we both know that. She knows it too, but she's trying to delay it. She's requesting mediation. My jaw clenched. Let her waste her time. I'll bring the receipts. The mediation was scheduled for a week later in a downtown office. I arrived early, suited, head clear. Lena arrived late, disheveled, her once glowing confidence now replaced by worn-out excuses and smeared mascara. She barely looked at me. Maya went first. Calmly, she laid out the case. Documented infidelity, financial misconduct, emotional manipulation. She cited my evidence like bullets in a loaded chamber. Lena tried to argue she was emotionally neglected. The mediator, a gray-haired woman with eyes like knives, didn't flinch. You committed sustained infidelity, Miss Hart. That is not neglect. That is cruelty. For once, Lena said nothing. By the end, it was clear there would be no alimony, no split of assets. She walked away with her clothes, a few keepsakes, and the echoes of home she'd burned down herself. I walked out a free man. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Charlotte Dalton, Chase's wife. It was handwritten. Leo, you didn't just save me. You woke me up. I would have spent years blaming myself, trying to fix him, but you gave me truth. That's more than most people ever get. I filed for divorce and taken the kids. I've started my own business, too. Just wanted you to know you're not the only one who came out stronger. Gratefully, Charlotte. I held the letter like it was gold. This was justice, not courtroom victories, not social shame. Liberation. 3 months passed. I had settled into a quiet life, new apartment, a few new friends. I wasn't dating, not seriously. I wasn't ready, but I was learning to love my solitude. I started teaching a night class, Introduction to Architectural Theory. My students were fresh-faced, hopeful. Every time I stepped into that lecture hall, I remembered what it felt like to build something that mattered. One night, after class, I stopped at a little Italian cafe I'd never noticed before. A woman behind the counter handed me a cappuccino with a smile that wasn't forced. Rough day? She asked. I chuckled. You could say that. Want to talk about it? She asked. I looked at her honest eyes. No games. Maybe someday, I said. Her name was Eva, and she didn't know a single thing about my past. And that felt like hope. Meanwhile, Lena was falling apart publicly. One of her mutual friends, an old co-worker of mine, called me. Have you seen her Facebook page? I hadn't. I'd unfollowed her months ago, but curiosity got the better of me. Her once curated feed was now a graveyard of vague sadness. Photos of empty wine glasses, inspirational quotes, a selfie with a caption, "Some people are only meant to teach you pain." Her comments were filled with pity from strangers and silence from those who actually knew her truth. She was alone, truly, deeply, deservedly alone. But I didn't feel joy. I felt nothing. And nothing is more powerful than rage. Nothing is the final victory. One night, I got one last email from her. Subject line, "You win. I'm moving. I need a fresh start. You were always right. I just didn't want to admit it. Maybe one day you'll forgive me, but I don't expect it. You don't owe me anything. I hope you're happy now." Lena, I didn't respond. There was no anger left. No revenge left to plan, because I had already won, not by breaking her, but by rebuilding myself. Lena didn't just cheat. She erased who I was piece by piece. But the thing about destruction is it clears the ground for something stronger. And in the end, I didn't just get justice. I got freedom. And freedom is a kind of revenge that leaves no blood behind. Only silence, the kind of silence that says, "You never broke me.